Good morning to all you seniors out there on Facebook and YouTube. And yesterday was the 25th of November, and I just wanted to share some stuff. In BC now, when you're 80 years old, you have to have a medical. That's part of renewal of your driver's license. You can get the new driver's license, but when you're 80, you have to have a medical, and they do it's a memory check. And then at 85, you get another one. And then you get, every 2 years after that, you have a renewal as well. So when the 2-year time comes up, you get a message from Victoria to tell you to do your memory test. It's a really exciting time, and when you take the test, it kind of reminds you about your parents and the aging process. I can remember visiting my dad at the care home, and at the particular time he was about 84, and you go in to see him, and he's sitting in the room there, enjoying his life there, and you get to talk to him about the old days. Well, sometimes we get back and talk about things that happened in the 1950 era, and his mind was as sharp as a tack. He could remember exactly things that were done and events, and whether it was a wedding or whether it was a job, but he remembered that really good. But he couldn't remember if he'd had breakfast or not. And that was within a couple of hours. And so one morning I went in to see him, and we talked about the old days and relived a lot of the times when we were younger, right back to the 1950s, and his mind was sharp as a tack. But when he said he didn't have breakfast, I got to worry about that. So I went to a lady that was staying in the care home, and she was sitting at the same table he was at to eat breakfast. And so I said to her, I said, Albina, did Dad come out for breakfast this morning? Oh, yeah, he was there. He didn't remember. So that kind of tells us a little bit about the short-term memory. So the memory is like a big sponge, and a lot of the things that we were trained in or remember go back to the old days. We remember those sharp as a bell. But there's some of the things that happen in the immediate future, or today, tomorrow, or whatever like that. The mind sometimes ages, and in some cases we lose ability. If we had Alzheimer's, we lose all the information we had over our lifetime. That's when the mind is deteriorated, and we forget everything we have learned. And then there's a short-term memory one that goes, and that's what we're talking about. And so the test that we had yesterday was very interesting. They go through an exercise of you read a list of numbers, and you're asked to repeat them, and then in a couple of cases, and then at the very end of the test, they ask you, where are you today, and you know the name of the town, yes, you know the date, you know the day, and what year is it, and that all information is all clear as a bell because it's recent. And in the memory test, they go back and they tell you a few things that they want to test you on, so you may be given a list of, say, 3 or 4 numbers. They tell you what the numbers are, and you repeat them. And then you go on with a little bit of discussion. You might talk for 5 or 10 minutes, and then they go back and ask you, what were those numbers? Well, that's a test to find out whether your immediate mind is deteriorating or not. So all the old stuff, you've got your driving capabilities, and you're walking and talking and recognizing people. That part of your memory can be working just fine. But when your short-term memory starts to go, it really means it's the same thing that's, if you think about when you go downtown to shop, your wife might tell you, if you still have a wife, might tell you, make sure you pick up a bottle of ketchup for me. And the reason for that, she wants to remember that. So if your memory is really good, you'll remember it. But in most cases, people will have a shopping list, so they'll write down a couple of items on the shopping list, and when you go downtown, you take a look at your list and you get it. Now, in a case where people don't write things down, like I in this particular phone, I have a little calendar thing. It's beautiful because when you go to see the doctor or you go to see the dentist, they want to make a reappointment for you. So you open up the phone and go to the calendar, and you type in the day and the time of the appointment and who it's with, and they also call you and remind you about the appointment, but you're in your phone, Every day it comes up, and if there's an appointment there, it'll blink on the phone, so that's your reminder. Now, if you don't have that, there's a possibility you'll forget. And over the years, if you think back, we've always written things down, and even over a lifetime, you still have to have a schedule. Because if you don't have a basic plan of what you want to do, that's why you have a calendar hanging on the wall. So you know that Sunday's coming up and Monday and what the dates are, and that's a reminder. And we've had that for years. And that hasn't changed. The only thing that is changing is the fact that this disease of Alzheimer's is happening to older people, and they start losing their short-term memory. And sometimes it's the long-term memory. Now, I've known a lot of friends, in fact, I visited them at the care homes, where you go and see them, and even though you worked with them for 25 years, they didn't even recognize you anymore. And we used to see that in the old days with our family, where you know somebody and might have been a neighbor or something like that, and you hadn't seen them for a long time, and all of a sudden you see them and they don't know you anymore. It's because their long-term memory is gone. So with Alzheimer's, we lose both the short-term and long-term memory. But in the one they're checking for now is short-term memory. So I fully expect that we will each time your 1 year term, well, from the 80, you have a first one at age 80, and then 85, another one, medical exam for that, and then after that, every 2 years. So if you have a short-term memory problem, it's going to be showing up in the test, and they're going to record that. So the next time you go in for another medical in 2 years, they'll be able to compare that with the last time. And the important thing is that if you think about it in terms of a chronological, if you have a calendar on the wall or you have a calendar on your phone, we're always keeping track of what has to be done, whether we have a medical coming up with a doctor or whether we have maybe take our car down and get it repaired, but it's something that we want to remember. And if it's really important, we have it on a calendar. And when we're younger, our mind is pretty sharp. We can remember things. But as a quirk, we have to have a calendar. We've had them for years. But it seems like there's a little bit of concern about whether a person could lose their memory totally and still be driving on the highway, and I can understand that. But when a person can actually go downtown, he's got a memory. He's either his calendar on his phone or he's got a calendar on his house, and it says, okay, today I got to go down and see the doctor at 10 o'clock, you go. Now, you automatically know where the office is, so you drive down there, you park your car, go in town, or go into the office, have your memory check or whatever the test it is, or whether it's a hospital x-ray, and you go and perform the task and you get it done, and you remember. But if you didn't have some form of a reminder, then you wouldn't be able to do that. But there is some concern about you shouldn't have to be reminded all the time about everything you learned. So with your driving skills, you remember how to park the vehicle, and you remember how to start it, and you remember when you drive all the way from the curb, you got to make sure that the traffic is clear so you don't run into somebody, and you got to stop at the stop signs, and the speed limits have to be observed. So if the policeman stops you and you don't know where you are, that's a whole different story, because you won't remember your name and you won't remember what town you're in and all that kind of stuff. So that's part of the exam. They test you. They want to know where you're at, and do you know what the date is and what the time is and what town are you at, and the name of the building, and that's all part of the test. And that allows them to check to see whether your immediate memory is working or not. But a lot of the things that we have, like music is a good example. If you're a musician, you learn how to play a song. It doesn't matter whether it's Maple Sugar or any old song. And in most cases, you learn that when they're young, and that's the tune because you exercise it. You keep trying it over and over again, and you're playing the song, and it stays with you probably for your entire life. But there are some musicians, we're experiencing some of that now, where a person has been a musician for years and years and years, and all of a sudden they can't remember the songs, and pretty soon they just can't remember how to play the instrument, period. So that's total amnesia, where they've lost their mind, they can't remember anything at all. And in those particular cases, when your mind deteriorates that far, they wind up putting you in an Alzheimer's ward, and there's a lock on the door, because in most cases, people can just walk out and not remember where their home is. So the short-term memory check is something new, and it's a cognitive check, and it's an interesting exercise, and you get to see how it works. And the one thing that I was a little amazed with was the fact that they give you a test, and they give you an object. They'll tell you what it is, and they'll tell you, well, I'm going to ask you to repeat this later on. And so they tell you the object, and you repeat it back, and then maybe 10 minutes later, what was the thing I told you? Well, when your short-term memory starts failing, you can't remember the things that are told you that particular day. So hence, that's the reminder thing about the shopping, where your wife tells you, make sure and pick me up an item downtown. So you write it down on a piece of paper, and that's so you don't forget. And the fact that you were told to get a bottle of ketchup in 1955 is no longer current. So the wife has to remind you today, pick it up, and you pick it up. And as long as that short-term memory is working, you're fine. But when it gets to the point where your short-term memory don't work, you won't be able to remember what town you're in. You won't be able to remember what building you're in or where you're going. And this cognitive test is a good one for that, because it really brings home the operation of the mind and how we can lose our short-term memory. And when we lose our short-term memory, I had a friend whose folks had moved up from Regina, Saskatchewan, and he was living in Kelowna. And as a simple thing to keep him healthy, he was walking every day, get out and walk and go for a nice walk, and sometimes up to a couple of miles, go around the block and walk back again. And he did that for years. One day he took off and went for a walk, and he didn't come back. And a woman down along the walkway went out and talked to him. She'd seen him go by about 4 times, so she stopped and asked him, "Sir, are you okay?" And he says, "I always walk this area, but I've seemed to have taken a wrong turn." And he couldn't remember how to get back on the track. So they called the RCMP, and the RCMP came down, and they called his son, and they found out he had short-term memory loss. He couldn't remember where he lived. And that's what they're checking for now. So I think it's a good thing. And our basic skills, if your basic skills section are working good, you should be good for a long time. But if your short-term memory thing is going on you, so you won't remember those deeds, the day will come probably when they will take our driver's license away. And that's okay, because if your memory is bad, that's a reason. Now, if your mind is good and you're physically healthy, you should be able to walk and talk and do all kinds of things until who knows, maybe to 90, 95 years old. I know a lot of guys. We got a guy that's 96 now that's operating his vehicle and walking around sharp as a tack, and he's happy. So I would encourage everybody to get prepared for the cognitive test, the memory test for your driver's license. I'm sure you'll find it challenging, and you're going to learn a lot about how your mind works. We automatically know now from our experience, but they're checking for it now. And if we lose our ability to remember where we're at, we're probably going to wind up in a care home. And that's okay too, because at least we'll be in there, and the door will be secured, and we won't be able to get out and not find our way back. So that's looking down the road a whole ways, but I would encourage you not to be frightened of the test. It's an interesting exercise. And my understanding is that every time you get a license renewal now, that's going to be part of the test. And I think it's a positive thing for everybody, as long as the politicians don't get on the ball and say, okay, everybody who's getting a test now has got to lose their license. Well, that necessarily isn't true. Because if your mind is sharp and you still have the ability and you're doing a driver's test, if you can do a road test and you can do all the road signs and the speeds, and you do all the safety features of your driving, shouldn't be a problem. But we encourage you to have a great day and look forward to all the challenges forward, and may the good Lord take a liking to you. Bye-bye.